Well, leave it up to me to find some very weird information about Castlevania. So, I was reading up on this new movie that's coming out called The Nun 2. I'd seen the first one in the theaters last year, and I thought it was pretty good. And one of the reasons why I went to go see it is because I read an interesting article that Castlevania was actually a huge inspiration for the movie. What I didn't know is that the, director or producer or co-writer or something, I can't remember off the top of my head, but James Wan, he's done a ton of stuff, mostly in the horror genre, stuff like Saw and the Conjuring series, and so he was actually attached to work on the Castlevania movie that was supposed to come out like forever ago, that ultimately got shelved. I think at one point in time it was supposed to be the guy that did all the Resident Evil movies. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Anderson, I believe. Paul W.S. Anderson, I think it was. Which, I'm so glad that he didn't make a Castlevania movie. Because those Resident Evil movies are, they are bad. The second movie I enjoyed, but that's it. I really didn't like any of those Resident Evil movies. But the fact that James Wan was supposed to be working on a Castlevania movie and taking over for Paul W.S. Anderson is really interesting, and Konami was apparently very big on the idea of him taking over and taking it in a different direction than what Anderson was going to do. So why did it get canceled? I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure something just happened. He probably got distracted with other projects and ultimately just felt he needed to not work on it. Why Konami hasn't done anything with that movie and with Mr. Wan, I'm not sure, but I would love to see them reapproach it, especially after seeing The Nun, seeing a few similarities to the vibe and atmosphere and feel to the Castlevania universe. But I'm kind of stoked to see this Nun 2 movie. It's supposed to be a direct continuation about 4 years after the first movie. And I swear this is not a promo for The Nun 2. I'm not being paid by any kind of movie studio or anything like that. But what's interesting is I found this article and it really inspired me to make a video on it. Did you know that Nicolas Cage was going to be Dracula in the Castlevania movie? Yeah, I didn't either. It's just like one of those weird offhanded articles that I found online and was just like, what? Yeah, they apparently talked to James Wan about his involvement in working on the Castlevania movie, and I guess this was like in reflection to the fact that Nicolas Cage had worked on Renfield, which is more like a horror comedy movie with Nicolas Cage as Dracula. And I haven't seen Renfield. I've heard it's pretty good. Some people said it wasn't that great, but I'm always interested in seeing any kind of movie based on Dracula, or really any kind of horror movie in that vein with the original monsters like Wolfman, Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the Mummy, all that stuff. So it turns out that apparently Nicolas Cage was in talks with James Wan to be Dracula back in the day, and the movie never got off ground. But I feel like it would be a different take on what was done in Renfield, most likely, because the movie wouldn't be a comedy. It would most likely be like an action-adventure movie. Still, to this day, I think the closest we'll ever get to a real Castlevania movie is probably Van Helsing, the Hugh Jackman movie. But The Nun came pretty close, at least in terms of atmosphere and style. So, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that Nicolas Cage would make a good Dracula? I mean, he would definitely probably play up the more like Symphony of the Night, more like hammy aspects of the role. I think he would do really well with that, and kind of like focusing on those more like B-movie-esque kind of styles. But I'm curious what you guys think of this news. Nobody had reported on it on YouTube, and I'm just kind of floored about that, because like the news that Nicolas Cage was almost Dracula is like too insane to bear. Like that like why weren't there like tons of people talking about it? I'm gonna leave it up to the Castlevania guy. Anyways, let me know what you think down in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and more Castlevania videos and other videos on the way.